Ingram Smith, Bud Elliott, back again for another episode of the Nolecast, looking at the linebacker position tonight as we continue to advance our way through our position preview series. Interesting group we're going to talk about. A couple of very familiar names coming back, a couple of young, promising players, and a couple of significant, if not perhaps intriguing, pieces that have been added via the portal. So this will be one of our shorter episodes, I would imagine. And so let's jump straight into it. Start the conversation with Nick Lundy. Nick Lundy, why do I always want to merge DJ and my man Nick Moody? I don't know why. Kind of similar playing styles, I guess. I don't know. DJ, it's the ultimate compliment I can give you is Nick Moody was one of my favorite players ever. Not necessarily for how good of a football player he was, just cool dude. Anywho, let's get into this linebacker preview, bud.
Let's do this thing, man. So you are replacing quite a bit there with the loss of Tatum Bethune and Kalen DeLoach. That's about 1,000 combined snaps last year at linebacker, 15 tackles for loss between them, 2 picks between them, both of them pretty memorable. Obviously, Bethune's in the ACC championship game was, to me, like one of the more like, oh my God, memorable interceptions that we've seen as Knowles, 23 combined run stops, 70 pass rush snaps. Deloach actually had 7 sacks last year, which I mean, it really did a nice job of rushing the passer, just due to the speed that he had there. And I mean, when they sent him, he routinely got pressure on the passer. I mean, we're talking 47% pressure rate. So really, really nice, including one pretty memorable one
One that
at
stands out.
Clemson,
I've got one that stands out. Yeah.
Which, like, was that the call? Was that not the call? I don't know. But it worked.
I've had people inside the building tell me that was absolutely the call, and I've had people tell me, "Hey, that was one of the best misunderstandings that's ever taken place." So who knows? What it did, what it was part of a larger pattern that you just alluded to. That is that Kalen had super top end speed and got to it very quickly and became a very dynamic piece in putting pressure on a quarterback and doing things that just because you don't show blitz in the first quarter second of a play or whatever doesn't mean that you don't have elements that can't get to the quarterback or maybe showing blitz is not the right term, but there's more blitzes that you can do other than just obviously walk a safety or a linebacker up to the line of scrimmage and people see it. So we'll leave it at that. And it's awesome to see the reports out of about Kalen out of Tampa Bay. I mean, for an undrafted guy, was probably as close to being drafted as any of the undrafted guys for Florida State. Kalen is routinely running with the ones or the twos and looks like he's got a very, very legit chance to make the roster. And that's awesome to see. So good for him.
I saw him got listed on their 2D.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Like that is awesome. So DJ Lundy, first down. Briefly was a Colorado Buffalo and then was not anymore. And I think Knowles fans are fairly excited about that. A guy that was, productive and a quality player for you last year. I mean, 6.5 tackles for loss, almost 400 snaps. It's not bad. 56 tackles, 12 run stops. Like a guy that definitely created some havoc. I feel like, as a coverage player, I don't know if his movements are always the best. However, his coverage numbers are really damn good. So
he's gotten much better at it. Gotten much better at it. And DJ's is an absurd athlete. Multiple time state champion wrestler. Just a guy that's probably as raw an athlete on the team as far as not everything's measured in a 40 time or a box jump or whatever. DJ's got great hand-eye coordination, exceptional strength, and a really good work ethic that's helped him round into the player that he is. And he's turned into a much, what was once a liability, perhaps a glaring liability, has changed a lot. And they've DJ is kind of emblematic of what I think you have in a strength and conditioning program right now too, and it's not just getting guys to squat and bench more. It's I think did I compare DJ to Jeff Luck a couple years ago when we were on my bachelor party? Like they did things with DJ Lundy that they tried to do with Jeff Luck 10 or 15 years ago, and
Unlock the hips, man.
he's gotten a lot more fluid in his hips and other things, and that's a testament to all the supporting pieces that surround the program and the strength and conditioning program that I think a lot of fans don't normally think about. But
Two
yeah, DJ's
storms
kind of
ago.
your known entity, and everybody else we're going to talk about is kind of what we think, what we project it to be. Some really intriguing pieces there, but um, from this point forward, everything else is kind of be based off either what we saw from them in limited participation last year, or what we've seen from them in practice, or that of what we're taking away from previous schools that they've been at.
So let's get to that. First of all, Lundy, if you're going to avoid having a big drop off, because I think clearly, like if you have two 23, 24-year-olds out there who have played a ton of snaps and they played, at a high level last year, that we can acknowledge there's probably some drop off this year. I think it's just kind of common sense, right? But if you're going to avoid a big drop off, Lundy is going to need to take that next step for you and be that guy, be a missile in the run game. And as you mentioned, can show those improvements as a pass coverage guy more consistently, which I think there's some chance that he can do. I mean, they base out of a 4-2-5 quite a bit. When you look at the schedule, like they like to play four down against those three wide sets. I mean, you know, like look at the schedule, right? Georgia Tech's going to be in three wide a lot. Boston College, we don't know. They could be two tight ends. We'll see. Um, Memphis is going to be three or four wide. Cal's three or four wide. SMU's three or four wide. Clemson's three or four wide. Duke's three or four wide. Miami, Carolina, the Irish, probably not. But Denbrock coming over from LSU, they could be more, and they have better receivers this year than before. And Florida's probably some mixture of 11 and 12 personnel. So you play a lot of spread teams this year, a whole lot. I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of just standard 4-3 out there because the situation simply does not dictate it. And like they like to match personnel and play matchups and do things just to try to gain those kind of micro edges that take a really good defense and make it a great defense. And I think they're pretty good at playing the matchups pretty often, as the results have indicated. So Lundy's got to be that guy for them, really. And glad to see that he's coming along, which is really important and will be very important in the Georgia Tech game. Just off jump because Haynes King, head quarterback's an excellent runner too. So I kind of like Lundy in the role of chasing down a quarterback, and we'll see, man. I do think that there's some chance that he plays, and I think there's a chance he can get drafted. Like maybe. I think it's. I say maybe, like, I don't know if people realize how hard it is to project like fourth and seventh rounders a year out. It's the potential span is quite wide, but he doesn't lack in areas that are like, okay, that guy's clearly not an NFL player. So I think there's potential there for him to reach that ceiling. All right, second down. I want to tell you about our friends at Legendary Home Loans. 550 plus Nolecast listeners have decided to use Legendary Team for their home loan needs. I've done it twice, personal testimonial, and I would do it again. Great job. 844 FSU Loan is the number to call. 844 FSU Loan is the number to call. And I saw some rates dropping down this week, so let's keep those rates dropping and get our Noles in some new homes. Hit the link in the show notes as well if you so choose to give Chad a shout. Who's going to play next to DJ Lundy is second down?
Yeah, great question. And I don't know that it can be answered by one name. I will say certainly there's times at practice that Cam Riley jumps out to you as far as if you're just looking at purely complementary pieces, like is having a 6'1" traditional kind of middle or strong side linebacker, is it a fun idea to then pair him with a kind of 6'5" rangy athlete? Yeah, those are complementary pieces that could work pretty well. Um, I'll say, look, I am optimistic on the linebackers in a what I would say like a reasonable form. Okay, like I'm not saying like, oh, Cam Riley is going to remind people of Tommy Polly or Derek Brooks or something like that, but he's a instinctive player. He has really good range and has impressed from a raw athleticism standpoint more than maybe I thought he would. There's moments where the Murphy kid from Alabama, you're like, ooh, that's an Alabama linebacker, just in pure physical gifts and traits. But it's hard to tell how much of the offense these guys have picked up and how much stuff like that plays in a practice setting. Uh, Cryer, the former Northwestern transfer, is a really, really solid piece who has impressed me, and I think is maybe the most reliable, or I don't know if reliable is the right word. I just think what you're getting with him. And Nicholson is, we just talked about Kalen DeLoach and how he's a special player. And when I talk to some of the GPS guys, I mean, Nicholson does everything that Kalen DeLoach has done from a top end GPS standpoint, from speed, and has some moments in practice where you're like, oh, that was a linebacker covering a kid 30 yards downfield. I think of all the players at the position, Nicholson's probably your best, just pure, lift, run in a straight line type of guy. He's a remarkable athlete with super high end speed, but a kid that's still, was predominantly a high school running back and is still, learning the position. I think the future for Blake is, I think the future is unlimited. Is silly hyperbole, but I think Blake is just scratching the surface of what ultimately he can be. And I'm thinking when we're doing this in a year from now, I think you're talking about a guy that's got a legit chance to be a first team all conference player. So
I agree. When I look at this, I like the versatility that FSU can throw at opponents. So you get Lundy and you get Riley, who are like 240-ish out there, and you might say, well, can they cover? And that's a fair question at that size when you see the body types. But they both move, relatively well and do things well. But I mean, I comes to mind, they like to play some light box, and a lot of times Fuller and company, they want to let that front six largely handle the run and let the DBs play pass, right? And man, that's a hell of a lot of beef up front, to where I think I think that they will invite opponents to run on them with certain linebacker looks, with confidence that they can stop the run with maybe not +1 in the box, because maybe they're +1 in physicality. So we'll have to see how that goes. But in theory, there certainly, it would seem to make sense. And Cryer is not tiny, by the way. I think it makes a lot of sense. Like, we don't really know who's going to be the guy that gets the helmet call, but if I'm kind of placing some dots, because you can't have certain guys on the field at the same time if they both have the helmet radio this year so you'll probably have to have guys at multiple helmets. But what do you want to bet Cryer gets a dot on his helmet?
Cryer will almost certainly be one of them. Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to say anything other than when you talk to that kid, you're like, yeah, I'm not surprised that you went to Northwestern at all. Like, that is a very, very bright young man. And Cryer's an impressive guy, and is very sharp.
And I mean, you look at this. Who recruited Cryer? Pat Fitzgerald, like former All Big Ten linebacker, who was the coach at, I mean, pre-scandal was the coach at Northwestern for almost 20 years, I think, right? So, a guy that really knows the linebacker position, played it himself. If you're going to play linebacker for Pat Fitzgerald, at times I think you would question the athleticism, but I think he has enough of it. But there's little doubt that you're probably pretty sharp, and so that logically tracks. I just don't feel that bad about this position, despite losing two guys who one got drafted and the other's having a heck of a preseason. And I think it's just, I think we can have realistic and fair questions about the ceiling of the room as comprised for this season. Although long term, I think maybe there's something there. But I don't think the floor of this room is necessarily all that bad. And maybe I'll look like a dummy in 4 months for saying that, but I just have some confidence that they can get this thing coached up to a level to where it's not a weakness, and maybe at times it can be a strength. I mean, they want them to bring that physicality, and I do think that they will have a drop off in terms of recognition. Hopefully, not too much of a drop off in terms of communication. Like that's one thing that Deloach and Bethune I thought did very well last year, and
Mhm.
maybe it goes unseen, but part of it, a part of defense is not allowing freebies and making the opponent earn it. And FSU allowed very few freebies last year,
Yeah.
so um, that's probably an area of concern. But I mean, with Murphy, I completely understand why they took him from Alabama. Based on we watched all of the snaps we could from actual gameplay. Uh, I I assume that they saw something more from him in Bama practice during games. I really couldn't tell, like if he could see it or not, or if he was just guessing, because they were in obvious run situations when he actually got in the game. Because most teams were in kind of give up mode against Alabama. But physically, I mean, yeah, like that makes sense. So that's not a bad little foursome. If the clear thing that would change this room is, I think there's two. It's Riley kind of understanding the defense faster than you would think a guy that joins you, post spring, like earlier on in the year, or the light bulb really coming on for Nicholson. Because for different reasons, like size speed combo, and obviously Nicholson's more speed, Riley's more size and length. But if either of those guys really hit, then you have a different looking linebacker room, and maybe one that actually is more of a potentially a strength of the team. So that'd be bueno for sure.
Mm. Yeah, no, I
We'll
mean,
see.
I think you can have a decent degree of confidence that the floor, you can feel comfortable about the floor. What you just said, there's too many pieces here, complementary pieces, and I think you've got a really, I feel that way in a large part because of Nicholson, because you've got such a raw piece that has uh just a significant upside, and I think as Blake comes on throughout the year, that you'll continue to see flashes, and you got a lot of really solid pieces. And I mean, look, there's plays of practice where Cam Riley absolutely flashes. Again, is that just because he's a smart football player that's played a lot of college snaps and practice? You're only going to see so much. We'll see, but he's been impressive, and I think the linebacker position is going to be a solid position, and not one that if you're going into the year and you have a couple concerns at a couple positions, certainly understand it. I don't know that this will be one by the end of the year.
It'll definitely be on Adam Fuller to optimize the room.
Yeah, yeah. Next time I see Adam, I'll give him Matt Lewis's number. He'll look at me and say, "Who are you? Why are you talking to me? And don't ever give me anything again." But I'll tell him, "Bro, you need to call this guy to optimize your business," and he'll say, "Get the hell out of practice. I don't ever want to talk to you again." So, if you're not Adam Fuller and you do actually need assistance, Matt Lewis is definitely who you want to talk to from a business perspective, HR, payroll, and a litany of other things that can help your business run in as effective a manner as possible. Congruityhr.com is the website. Matt Lewis is the guy who has helped, I think is approaching, I don't know the exact number. I know that I've gotten about an email a week from him over the last 6 weeks as to either a promising new contact or a business that has officially been closed. So great that Nolecast listeners continue to hear the message, and I can assure you that I've been at associated with 4 different businesses over the last 2 years when you count the Nolecast and some other things. And Matt Lewis and Congruity has been incredible at each stop along the way. So great people, and people that we continue to wholeheartedly endorse.
So one thing I'm curious about is there are some teams on this schedule against which I think you're probably going to want to play dime and play one backer, and that's not a slight on who you have at backer, but I mean Cal runs a lot of four wide open. Okay. and Duke will somewhat at times, depending. I mean, SMU has a really good tight end, Russell Maryland's kid, the legendary, Hurricane and Miami or not Miami Dolphins, sorry, Dallas Cowboys D lineman. Um, but I mean, Georgia Tech will run some four wide stuff.
Mhm.
Um, Miami, I could see a situation like if Horton really hits for them to where they're running like Restrepo, George, Horton, and Brown at the same time, especially if tight end doesn't emerge.
Mhm.
UNC, like they have Bryson Nesbitt, so probably not. But I mean, we just highlighted 3 or 4 or maybe 5 games where you're going to see like majority four wide, and I'm very curious. Like, who do you take off the field in that situation? And I'm not saying, hey, let's tell them practice secrets, but that's going to be another choice that this staff has to make, right? Um, because I mean, you may play 30% of your snaps this year and die, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because you have so many young DBs that I think you feel really good about. And so if you're able to stop the run with your front and control gaps, that could be a dangerous look for this team as well. And I could see that being a role for Cryer. I could also see like, in certain speed packages like Nicholson, maybe you play like some speed dime type looks, right? To where it's not a true 6 DB, but it's maybe a lighter backer to get more speed on the field against some of those spread looks. And there's a lot of different things you could do with this defense against the opposing slate of offenses that you're going to face. And I'm kind of excited for some of this. We should note that Adam Fuller did praise Graham coming out of the scrimmage, Omar Graham, a guy we've not really mentioned yet on the show, but somebody that the staff still seems to have some belief in, despite obviously he had some injury setbacks last year, and we'll see what comes from some of the other young guys as well. But I mean, there's a chance they hit on one of those dudes, and that would be quite helpful. They're recruiting the position extremely well right now, though.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be excited about in the future, and probably a couple pieces on the roster right now that you'll get a better idea as to what they ultimately are throughout the course of the season. But yeah, Hickman Collins is another guy that you hear coaches speak of positively after practice. That's just a hard to get an evaluation of until you see more real game tape on. But somebody whose name you hear associated with that room. So. Yeah, man. Anything?
What else on linebacker?
Yeah, linebacker. No, I mean that's about it. Always want to thank our friends at For the Table Restaurant Group, Charlie Park. Fantastic spot. Certainly a place that we would suggest that you get reservations for as we enter into the football season here in Charlie Park Rooftopbar.com. Wonderful place and a place that I always try to make my way over to if I just want something a little bit different when I'm in Tallahassee. So.
Starting shot here is these guys at least look like they belong. And I do think you think back to maybe that 2021 or 2020 roster, not everybody did. And doesn't mean they can all play. There's a lot of cerebral stuff that goes into being a good backer. But I do like that on body types, they are, they're somewhat getting better there, which is good. And obviously, recruiting right now has a chance to get even better. So,
Yeah.
awesome, man. I will see you on the flip.
Till next time.